It's Gab and Dad. Welcome to the show. It's Gab and Dad. Don't have to look at me. This is Gab. She'll tell you about the film.
He really wants a theme song. If anybody would like to submit a theme song, maybe we should have a contest. Because that's not it. That's not going to be it.
All right, that's not it. Okay.
That was about as disturbing as the movie
tell us
we're
about the
talking
new
about.
movie.
Yeah, it's as scary as you're singing.
Tell us about the movie.
Splice, a new sci-fi horror thriller
Comedy.
Hybrid. Get it? Comedy, an intentional comedy perhaps, brought to us by, I'm not sure who, but there's...
It's a heavily Canadian film.
Yeah, there's Canadian influence.
It was filmed in Toronto.
We're in Canada, we're Canadian by the way.
Filmed in Toronto, and in fact, during the filming, Adrian Brody lived in our old apartment. Not ours, but my old apartment.
Yeah, that's just a little side note. I bumped into him in an elevator while he was in Toronto.
She came, Dad, guess what? Dad,
I just met Adrian Brody.
I was just in the elevator with Adrian Brody.
Well, I didn't act like that, but it was pretty cool.
Close.
So anyway, the movie stars...
filmed in Toronto.
Yep, it was not that you can really tell necessarily.
And Sarah Polley, a Canadian, is the lead female.
It stars Adrian Brody, Oscar winner you're probably familiar with, and Sarah Polley.
The one who kissed Halle Berry.
The one who kissed Halle Berry.
The famous kiss.
And Sarah Polley, and they play young, hip geneticists, are there any other kind, who are working on splicing together the genes of, or the DNA of various animals. They work for a corporation that's interested in, you know, proteins that are going to make cattle stronger or whatever, something like that. Something not too interesting, but what's interesting is that these scientists want to go into a more controversial area, of course, and they want to involve human DNA in this process.
Well, actually, that's not strictly true. The female scientist, unbeknownst to the male scientist, injects DNA into a creature they've created, so it becomes like a kind of a combination.
No, they create a new one. She creates a new one.
All right. Well, it's a combination of human DNA and it's a hybrid.
Yeah.
We have to be careful not to give spoilers away here because.
Well, that's not a spoiler. That's the whole basis of it.
That's not a spoiler. But I came close to making spoilers.
Well, yeah, she does it behind his back, but they're both interested in it. He raises more sort of moral concerns than she does. She's just sort of gung-ho about giving it a try, so then she goes ahead with it. And so he's always sort of the naysayer of the... And they're also a couple.
We are creating life. We are messing with the universe.
Yeah, he's a bit of... And also because they work for this corporation.
And they're a couple.
And they're a romantic couple. So there's different sort of little conflicts involved. But basically within the first 15 minutes they've just jumped ahead and created this creature. So they sort of gloss over the science of it. They don't get really too deep into that, which I think is okay. It depends where your interests lie. But it's not really the point of the film is the actual science of it all.
Because what is the point?
The point is the creature. They create this, I guess we'll just call it a creature. It's I mean it's not from another planet, but it's created under strange scientific parameters.
And the creature has a lot of human qualities.
Yeah, well, it's half human and half... Human. They never said what the other animal was, that it was combined...
Beaver.
With beaver.
It's a Canadian film.
It's sexier than a beaver. Anyway, so this creature is born and starts to develop at a very rapid rate, as they always do in these movies, because it's a movie. If it didn't develop quickly, it would be a long,
very long It could be like 50 years long.
Part 2. And you can tell right away that there's human qualities to this creature. It sort of looks like a cute little kid almost, but it has other sort of strange...
there's a slightly sinister subtext about that, which I won't go into because that would be a spoiler. But
yeah, don't say what I think you want to say.
I'm not going to say what I was going to say.
Oh wow, that's a first. So basically they're trying to figure out this creature, take care of it, hide it from the sort of company that they work for. So they basically sort of put it in a box in the closet. I mean, there's a lot of sort of what are we going to do with it, and
they end up...
And they sort of like they've become parents. There's sort of this metaphor for the parental
They're not very good parents because at one point they keep this creature it's in the middle of a Canadian winter, which many of you may know can be severe, and they keep it in an unheated barn with huge gaps in the slats, the wind whistling in through.
Poor little creature.
Poor little spliced creature.
Which at this point is not a little creature, it's sort of a sexy, come hithery kind of...
No spoiler alerts here. No spoilers.
Sexy isn't a spoiler. I think that a lot of the sort of the sci-fi fan base who've heard about this film ahead of time have heard certain things that are going to make them enticed to see it, that are sort of about this when the creature becomes a more mature version, shall we say, and some of the things it gets up to in the barn, which we don't want to spoil, but there's some shocking, bizarre, uncomfortable scenes.
Now, what do you think of this film?
It's hard to know what to think of this film. I think there are interesting elements to the story,
Yes.
moral questions and possibilities about the science and whatnot.
It's a clever and original story in some respects.
Not entirely original, but it's original enough. And
it's not your run-of-the-mill, that's for sure.
it's not run-of-the-mill because of said scenes that we've mentioned. And it's also not run-of-the-mill because I'm not sure where the tone wanted to go. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, my principal objection to this film, I kind of liked it in a way, but it was not successful. My principal objection to it is the tone is very muddled. It's never clear whether it's a sci-fi film, whether it's a horror film, there are horrific elements to it, whether it's a comedy, because there's sort of kind of madcap comedic elements to it. It's a very muddled tone.
The audience was laughing a lot, and I think it was unintentional.
Yeah, so it's a very muddled tone and confusing tone that I think detracts from the impact of the film and leaves one unsatisfied and unsure about it. I also think some of the writing, some of the script is bad, and I have to say this with sorrow. I think Sarah Polley
sucks.
Isn't it? Well, that's not something you'd say with sorrow. I was going to say that Sarah Polley is a poor actress. She is almost painfully poor in this film. Adrian Brody, on the other hand,
he was quite game.
Yes, he was giving it a good college try.
Unbelievable. Well, believable.
But I sort of had the feeling that at the end of it, he thought, "Oh, thank God, this is over." And indeed, he was on. They were all at the premiere that we went to, and Adrian Brody was up on stage. And I noticed at one point, I don't know if you noticed this, when the director, I think it was, said, "Some people may find this film disturbing," and Brody was going, and I think he meant he found it disturbing.
Well, he should, considering what he does in it. Yeah, it straddles the line between, it's almost like pseudo-satirical at some points. I mean, the writing and the directing, I have to say, is very schlocky. I mean, the crescending music and then the boo. And every time you know there's going to be a boo, there's a boo. And it's very much predictable in that sense. There aren't really many surprises other than the sort of the shocking scenes we've mentioned. So I felt like it was almost a satire of the genre rather than being a truly interesting representation of the genre. And I kept thinking if it had been a better director like Cronenberg, a Canadian, very well-known, creepy auteur, could have elevated it to a more sophisticated level.
So I think the definitive word was Gabrielle's. As we were walking away from the premiere a few days ago, we're walking out of the theatre, I said to her, "Well, what did you think of it?" She said, "I prefer not to say right now because the director might be behind me." And that's what we think about this film. I think that's the end.
You want to sing?
Well, that's the end.